Virginia's modern map may look full and established, but if you look closer, beyond the dense Appalachian forests or the isolated coastline, you will find empty spaces left behind by civilization. Here, a town could be born from the discovery of a single coal seam and died just as quickly when market demand shifted somewhere else. This is not just about buildings falling apart, but about human ambition losing its fight against time and a brutal economy. From colonial sites now buried in mud to industrial centers slowly counting down toward total silence, let us trace 15 places in Virginia that have already become history, and those now standing on the edge of disappearance. We have to begin at the starting point, a place where American history began and where its first urban failure also took shape. In our history, Jamestown is remembered as the first permanent English settlement, founded on May 14, 1607, by the Virginia Company of London. Jamestown is not just a tourist site, it is a capital city that gave up. Located on an island in the James River, the town once served as the center of government for nearly a century, before nature proved its power through brackish water, disease, and the Great Fire of 1698. Once the seat of government moved to Williamsburg, Jamestown stopped breathing. Today, all that remains is the original 17th century church tower, standing alone among thousands of artifacts buried in the ground. The rest are reconstructed buildings. It remains a reminder that even a capital can disappear when the land no longer supports life. But Jamestown was not the only colonial ambition to collapse, because not far from it, a settlement designed to be more modern met an even bloodier fate. Few people now remember that Jamestown nearly had a serious rival called Henricus. Founded in 1611 in what is now Chesterfield County, it was planned as a healthier and more strategic alternative. It even had a hospital and plans for what would have been the first university in America. But its future was cut short in a matter of hours when the Indian Massacre of 1622 leveled the settlement. Henricus was never rebuilt as a functioning town. Today, it is only a quiet historical park. The old defensive trenches can still be faintly seen beneath the trees, holding the trauma of an ambition extinguished by conflict. Moving into Fairfax County, right beside the dramatic waters of Great Falls, there once stood an industrial town called Matildaville. Founded in the late 18th century by light horse Harry Lee, the town served as a base for workers building the Potomac Canal. At its height, Matildaville had large homes, inns, and blacksmith shops. But George Washington's dream of turning the canal into a major trade route failed after it was overtaken by a more efficient new technology, the railroad. Once canal operations stopped in 1828, Matildaville lost its reason to exist. Its residents left in search of work in Washington, D.C., leaving behind stone buildings that now survive only as roofless wall ruins inside the forest of a national park. Losing to technology is painful enough, but for this settlement in the southeastern edge of Virginia, the real enemy was the unforgiving force of the ocean. Few would guess that inside False Cape State Park, there once stood Wash Woods, a town born out of a shipwreck. Legend says its first residents were survivors of a vessel destroyed by a storm, who then built a life between the marshes and the sea. Life here was harsh. The only access came by beach or by boat. This fishing community even built a church and a school using wood taken from wrecked ships washed ashore. But land erosion and extreme weather eventually drove them out. By the 1930s, the town was essentially abandoned. If you walk far enough into the park today, you can still find the remains of an old cemetery and the foundation of a church slowly sinking into the coastal sand. From the silence of the coast, we move deep into the interior forests, where an iron industry town once stood proudly before disappearing almost without a trace. That place was Lignite, a monument to how quickly extractive industries can build up and destroy a place. In the early 1900s, it was a self-contained town with hundreds of homes, churches, and even a luxury hotel for iron miners. But once World War I ended and demand for iron collapsed, the mine shut down in 1923. Almost overnight, the company sold off the houses for their lumber, leaving the town stripped bare. Now, Lignite has been completely reclaimed by the wild. The remaining concrete structures hidden in dense forests take real effort to find, as if the civilization that stood there was only a hallucination from the past. Lignite's destruction may feel complete, but in Appomattox County, there is a town that still keeps its physical form, even though its spirit left long ago. In contrast to the earlier places, Pamplin City offers a very cinematic ghost town view because the line of stores along its main street is still standing. In the late 19th century, this place held the title of the largest producer of clay pipes in the world. Millions of pipes were shipped from here across the globe. But when pipe smoking faded and the factory closed, the town's pulse stopped with it. Although some homes on the outskirts are still occupied, the downtown is a row of empty brick buildings with broken windows and tightly locked doors, creating a deeply unsettling feeling of a place frozen in time for anyone who passes through. Next, this may be the strangest place on the list. Elko Tract in Henrico County is not a ghost town in the traditional sense, but an abandoned World War II shadow town project. In 1942, the government built a network of paved roads, water lines, and other facilities for what was planned to be a massive military hospital. It also included fake military infrastructure, such as an airfield, complete with decoy fighter planes. The idea was to mislead enemy bombers and draw them away from Byrd Field in Richmond. But the war ended sooner than expected, and the project was abandoned. For decades, the empty roads crossing through the forest led nowhere, creating an asphalt maze visited mostly by thrill seekers. Even though part of the area is now starting to be developed for industrial data centers, the road traces of Elko's Ghost Town project remain an urban legend that still fascinates military history researchers. If Elko was a town that failed to be born, then this place is a pure picture of the slow fading of traditional farm prosperity. Located in Mecklenburg County, Union Level is a remnant of the tobacco farming era that once flourished across Southside Virginia. It was even an important transit point for local farmers, with a busy general store and post office. As the economy shifted toward larger industries and new transportation routes passed elsewhere, Union Level slowly dimmed. The most iconic building here is the old general store, its roof beginning to sag and surrounded by rusting farm equipment. Even though it is called a ghost town, the row of historic buildings offers something of its own, an authentic picture of how small rural communities once lived. From towns that are already dead, let us move to one that is still dying. Some places show signs that they may not last much longer. Among the towns at risk, Pocahontas in Tazewell County stands like a giant artifact. In the 1880s, it was one of the richest towns around because of its extraordinary coal reserves. Its European-style architecture still shows traces of that former grandeur. But now it feels too large for a population that has shrunk to under 300 people. Many buildings in the downtown area are now empty or survive only as museums. Pocahontas is fighting against time. It is a town that refuses to die, but without new economic activity, it is slowly turning into a silent, open-air museum. Pocahontas may still have some support from tourism, but for this company town, the future feels much darker. If you want to see a town that looks heartbroken, look at Dante in Russell County. As the former stronghold of the massive Clinchfield Coal Corporation, Dante was once highly organized. At its peak in the 1930s, this company town was thriving, with a company store, hotel, hospital, bank, steam plant, and pharmacy. It was also a diverse company town, with schools and churches for both black and white residents. Today, its biggest challenge is aging infrastructure and the complete loss of jobs. Hundreds of identical worker houses now sit quietly along the hillsides, many of them boarded up. With its population continuing to fall sharply and access remaining difficult, Dante faces a very real risk of becoming an empty town within the next decade, unless some kind of economic miracle arrives. A similar fate hangs over a town whose name represents the entire mountain region itself. Yes, the town of Appalachia in Wise County stands as a living witness to the collapse of coal's dominance. Its growth was driven by the broad coal mining industry in the Appalachian Plateau, which brought infrastructure, a diverse workforce, and rapid urbanization to the area. Unlike many other small towns, it developed a dense downtown of multi-story brick buildings, leftovers from a time when the population was much larger. But today, walking here in the middle of the day feels like walking through the set of a quiet post-apocalyptic film. Deep economic and social struggles have caused many family-owned shops to close for good. Even with efforts to promote nature tourism, the rows of abandoned houses send a strong signal that this town is standing on the edge of disappearance. Nearby, there is St. Paul, which is trying to resist this wave of depopulation in a different way. Right now, St. Paul stands at a very critical crossroads. It was once known for its role as a major railroad distribution center. Because of its noisy, fast-moving atmosphere and rapid growth in the early 20th century, part of the town was once nicknamed the Frontier West. Today, the town struggles with high unemployment. Even so, it has been fairly active in trying to revive itself, including through off-road tourism trails and by focusing on its location along the Clinch River. But the reality on the ground is still harsh. Many historic buildings continue to decay because of a lack of investors. If these tourism efforts fail to create a lasting impact, St. Paul may soon follow Dante into becoming a place that loses its pulse. But sometimes a town's enemy is not only the economy, but geography itself, as Grundy has shown. Wedged into a narrow gap between steep mountains in Buchanan County, Grundy spent decades trapped by major floods from the Lavisa Fork River, which often overflowed without warning. To save its administrative center, the government carried out an extraordinary engineering project by cutting into the mountainside and moving the entire business district to higher ground. But after the threat of nature was addressed at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars, Grundy faced a more deadly enemy: population loss. It has lost nearly 20% of its residents in the past decade alone. Even though the new downtown looks modern, the atmosphere there feels stagnant and quiet. The shopping center built on the hill cannot hide the fact that the houses in the lower valley are being left behind and slowly falling apart. Next is Clifton Forge, a town with one of the richest railroad histories on the East Coast. But that past greatness has now become a very heavy burden to carry. You can still see the old prosperity in the rows of large Victorian homes and classical commercial buildings standing along the hillside. The problem is that when railroad operations shifted toward automation and national freight routes changed, Clifton Forge lost the main reason it had once stayed busy. Today, many of the grand homes that once belonged to railroad officials look faded, with peeling paint and neglected yards. Although the local arts community has made efforts to turn old warehouses into galleries, poverty here remains a very real challenge. The town still has oversized infrastructure built for thousands of workers, but it is now occupied by a population that keeps shrinking and growing older. To close, Galax is the face of industrial decline hitting the heart of America. For nearly a century, it was known as a world center for furniture and textiles, a town where almost every family had someone working in a factory. But the wave of globalization in the early 2000s caused major factories here to close all at once and move production overseas. The impact was not only economic, but a collapse of the town's identity. Downtown Galax today is lined with dusty storefronts, and the signs of family businesses that lasted for decades are now being taken down one by one. Although it still holds the title of old-time music capital and draws thousands of visitors through the Old Fiddlers Convention, that energy is felt for only 1 week each year. The other 11 months, the town fights against emptiness in the massive manufacturing buildings now abandoned on its outskirts. Galax has become a symbol of thousands of small towns that now live mostly on the memory of their best years. They have a grand history, but an increasingly uncertain future as the number of working-age residents continues to decline. In the end, these 15 places in Virginia show that a town is only a collection of structures held together by economic purpose and human need. Once that bond breaks, nature and time quickly take over and begin erasing what was left behind. From the ruins of Jamestown to the quiet streets of Galax, looking at these places is a way of honoring the human stories that once struggled there, while also serving as a reminder that in a world that keeps changing, no place is truly permanent. What do you think?